Now seems like a great time to talk about cladding for the house and what went into our decision. You've got some great options. I know we have the Hardie cement board siding on our house right now, and it's a great product. I've installed some of that. I know LP SmartSide's a great product as well. I've seen a lot about that. I spent a lot of time watching videos and doing research. For us, it came down to vinyl siding. And we made that decision based on mostly time and money. For us, we're doing all this ourselves, so time and money is usually what drives most of our decisions. This already comes finished, so once I put it up, I don't have to go back and paint it. So that reduced time and cost. So normally you'd put up one of the other products and then you still have to pay for paint. I would have to mask off everything because I have roofs and windows and all that stuff. I'd mask it all off, spray it, touch it all up, caulk some of the joints. So that's a lot more time and it's a lot more material and material cost. We had a difficult time getting siding, so at one point I did look into and ran the cost numbers for how much paint. We bought almost 6,000 square feet of siding, so we would also have had to buy, if it was LP SmartSide, we would have bought the material plus 6,000 square feet of coverage for paint. And we all know that paint doesn't cover 100%, especially if you're going to spray it. So that's going to add up. One of the other things was just I don't know if it's a word, but handleability of it. My ability to pick up a 16-foot length, and that's what we ended up buying, is 16-foot individual pieces. I can pick one of those up by myself and clip it in, and once I hook it, it stays. So then I just screw it off. So doing a lot of this myself, that was a huge factor. It saved me a lot of time, and it was a lot easier to install. We chose a color that we thought would fade well. I know that vinyl siding and a lot of these things, even if you paint it, it's going to fade. If you paint it, you could paint it again, which I'm not crazy about the idea of that. But in our case, most of this has a pretty good warranty, and I expect it to fade, so we tried to pick a color that as it faded, you wouldn't really notice it as much. So we stayed away from really bright, or hunter green or red or something like that. We thought we'd notice it as it chalked. So we chose insulated vinyl siding mostly because of the hurricanes. A lot of houses here have vinyl siding on their second stories. Most houses are typically block up to about 8 feet with a poured lineal. And then if it's a 2-story, they'll frame it, and then the second story gets conventionally framed. And that generally gets sheathing and siding on it. And if the wind catches the laps of the siding, it can pop it off. My brother-in-law actually had that happen on his house, and he had to replace a couple of the pieces. So we were hoping that the insulated would be a little bit more rigid, would be a little bit stronger, would hold better. There's some other benefits, but that was probably the biggest benefit. It does add a 2.0, R value of 2.0 to 2.7. I don't know where the variance is. I suppose it's variable on the siding because at one point the foam is thicker than another. For us, it came down to Ply-Gem and Certainteed. Ply-Gem was almost twice the cost of Certainteed, so Certainteed won based on cost. I mentioned before there's 16-foot pieces. We went with that. We went with a 16-foot single 7, and that is a profile that's a 7-inch reveal rather than like a Dutch lap or double Dutch lap. Just because we have some pretty big walls. The north wall is a very large wall. We have some very open walls, and we didn't want a lot of horizontal lines. So the 7-inch profile was kind of our choice there. I know there's a lot of concerns around just the environmental impacts of vinyl siding. I did notice this. It wasn't a deciding factor for us, but I thought I'd mention it anyways. A lot of their material is recycled. The waste and the scrap that comes off of the production of it generally goes back into the production of it. I think I read that there's even one plant for certainty that's like 100% recycled material, but on average I think they're like 60%. If you are going to try to be LEED certified, that might make a difference. Installation wise, it goes on pretty easy. The lineals are a little tricky, sometimes just learning all the cuts and miters and stuff like that. I did a video on the installation or how I cut all those, so you can check that video out. But other than that, you just lift up big pieces. You measure from the foam to foam because the foam butts together for the overlaps, which I thought was nice. So you didn't have to worry about what the overlap was, and they make the piece to overlap. It has a specific width for that overlap. We installed it with screws since I have metal studs and some metal trim in behind there, and it was surprising to me how often I hit a stud. So I used a self-piercing lath screw so that it would punch through the studs instead of using nails. I liked the screws because if you overdrive them, you can just back them out a little bit. You really have to be careful not to overdrive or pin the siding too hard. So it should be able to move. It has to move as it expands and contracts. The last thing I'll mention about installation, be sure you check out installation manuals because some of them can go over just sheathing. Certainty said it could be over a structural sheathing, and I just have to screw it, I think, every 16 inches. But some of them require you to hit studs, and that actually ruled out, I think it was Allside that it ruled out. We couldn't use them because it had to go into studs. I have horizontal studs, not vertical studs, so it's nearly impossible for me to hit a stud every time. So something to consider. I think that about wraps it up for just our thought process and decision for the cladding that we used on the house. So I hope you enjoy.
Can you go in the closet?
I didn't know it, but my 6-foot level, 5-foot level, my long level, somehow is not level anymore. I think it's level if you use the magnetic side, and it's not level if you use the non-magnetic side. So of course I used the level to make sure that the siding was level as I was putting it on, but it's actually 1/4 of an inch off. So I couldn't figure out why the back wall didn't line up with the side wall. This is kind of the cove in between the garage and the house. I couldn't figure out why the two walls weren't lining up. I know I put the starter strip on last night with the laser, with my leveling laser. So I knew that was pretty level. And then the siding, when I tried to level it, it seemed loose in the starter strip. I probably should have picked up on that, but I thought it was just the starter strip or something bowed. So now I get to take it all back off and do it all again. This is the front of the house. It's an area that you walk by a lot, and so I really want it to be right. Maybe no one will notice it. I would notice it. I would notice it every time I walked past it. So I'm going to take them all down to the bottom one and redo them. So I was hoping to make better progress today, but I think doing rework is going to change that. So I'll get back to taking these off and leveling them and putting them back on. So let's get to it. Okay, I'm back where I was about an hour ago, and they're all level and lined up. I didn't film reassembly for 2 reasons. One, I used the tripod for the laser, and I used the laser this time to make sure they were all lined up. And also because, well, I already filmed myself putting them up once. So just imagine that. But imagine them going on level instead of crooked. Maybe I got a little bit of daylight left. Maybe I could finish out this wall and get it up to at least close to the eave. So I'll work on that now.